The Edmonton Oilers were that close to getting away with highway robbery in game number 1 of their first round series against the LA Kings on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Game 1 loser edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis, one full season in the books as host of Locked On Oilers, my third NHL season with the Locked On Podcast Network. And before we get to today's show, I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we have a lot to get to. This was a very dense game. We are going to unpack this game further on tomorrow's show as well, a little bit more strategy and tactics perspective. Today, we're going to hone in on the themes, the takeaways. I'll give you a little bit of a purview into my note-taking during the course of the game to see how chaotic things got. But we're going to start with the feel, the energy, the style of play. We're going to talk about some of the key sequences that I felt like determined this game. And then we're going to pivot to where the Oilers go from here, some adjustments, some takeaways, some lessons. So we know the Oilers do not start fast. They are one of the weaker teams as far as first period goal differential in the regular season this past season. And that's not a stinging indictment. You know, some teams just get off to slow starts. They get better as the game goes along. And over the course of the regular season this year, the Oilers were outscored 69-80 in the first period, and they outscored opponents 102-76 in the second, 76-75 in the third, and then 12-4 in overtime period. So the Oilers are definitely a team that gets better as the game goes along. And some of that is just by virtue of their preferred style of play, that they're very good off the counterattack, that they generally play better defense when their defense doesn't need to be perfect. And that typically is commiserate with pushing for some offense and taking some of the heat off. And I was worried. Let me tell you, from the first 10 minutes of this game, I had that nervous pit in my stomach we all know and love from playoff hockey. And it was a real stressful first period. I cannot begin to describe how antsy I was watching this game. I was doing my best to take notes as I went along, but man, there were stretches where I was just tapping my foot. I was sitting on my hands. I was biting my lip and just absolutely uncomfortable because, make no mistake about it, the Oilers might be a more talented team, but the Kings, for 57 minutes of this game, absolutely had their foot on the Oilers' necks. There was no room to speak of in the offensive zone for the Oilers. I had 3 different people text me throughout the course of the game saying, wow, the Kings aren't giving the Oilers anything. And I felt it's going to sound obvious, but the Oilers looked like a team that hadn't really played a whole lot over the last few weeks. And you got to remember, McDavid and Draisaitl, Jake Wallman, Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins missed a game in there. Stu's only played 2 since coming back from the concussion. It's really hard to just ramp up and get yourself ready. As much as we want to talk about practice, morning skate, those environments are not conducive to getting up to game speed. The only way to get up to game speed is to play the game. The Oilers did show me something over the course of this game, and that is something we will address later on in the show, that they did come away with something. They did find some things that worked for them as this game went along, but for large swaths of this game, the Oilers' offense was rendered wholly ineffective. The Oilers could not establish the offensive zone. The only line that was really doing that at any point was the Henrique line, and they weren't playing frequently enough in this game for that to have made a real difference. And look, I understand the context of this game. I understand the fact that the Oilers haven't played a lot of competitive hockey with their full lineup as of late, and some guys needed some time to get going. I thought Leon definitely looked a little rusty to start this game. I thought a lot of the guys just not the soundest of decisions. I singled out Evan Bouchard in a tweet I had made during the course of the game for throwing a puck blindly towards the net front with his back to the play because he won the puck battle and threw it to the front. I thought Darnell Nurse lost quite a few puck battles below the goal line. It seemed like, and again, anecdotally, he lost every single one of those 50-50 pucks. And when you don't feel great about your defense, and the Oilers did choose to dress Josh Brown over Cam Dineen, I would not have gone with that decision. I know Josh Brown didn't play a lot in this game, only 454 of ice time, and some of that being on the penalty kill, which I find outrageous. But by and large, the Oilers really rode their big guns. Bouchard 28-20, Nurse 25-17, Kulak 24-58, Jake Wallman 19-35, but some of that's because of he took a couple penalties in this game. And I will get out in front of this now. I thought the officiating was pretty bad in both directions. It seems like they missed quite a bit. It feels like they were very nondescript in what they were deciding they were going to call and what they weren't going to call. And I thought the penalty they called on Zach Hyman for a legal hit to the head was ridiculous. I felt the Kings were clutching and grabbing and tugging anytime Connor or Leon had the puck in the offensive zone. But this is the playoffs, and you have to accept that there's going to be a little bit more leeway, even though statistically they typically call more penalties in the first two rounds of the playoffs than they do in the regular season based on the last few years of data. But the Oilers really struggled to get their feet under them in this game. And the fact the Oilers were able to tie this game at 5 after being down 4-0 is nothing short of a miracle. Like we talk about how great Connor McDavid is, but he had a point on all 4 of the goals. He scored some goals. He created some goals and found a way to drag a team that had been lifeless for almost the entire game into the fight. And when McDavid scores that goal to tie the game at 5, the Kings are shell-shocked. The Oilers have seized all of the momentum. That building is dead quiet. And the Oilers had it right there in front of them. All they had to do was get to overtime. And based on the way that last 10 minutes of regulation had gone, the Oilers have all the momentum. Yes, they're probably tired from playing their big guns so much, but they're going to have a great chance to continue that snowball effect, to get out in front and make something happen for themselves in overtime. The Oilers have a great record in overtime, of course, in the regular season 3-on-3. There's no team you're going to take their best 3-man unit over the Oilers, Connor, Leon, and Bouch, and the playoffs are obviously different because it's 5s aside. But man, that was a missed opportunity, and you don't get a whole lot of those in the playoffs. I felt the Kings really did themselves a disservice starting to shell as early as they did in this game. And yes, you give some benefit of the doubt to the Kings, being that the Oilers are led by a supernatural freak. Like, they're very few players in the world, if any, are going to be able to orchestrate this type of comeback single-handedly the way Connor did. And we'll talk about the goaltending. We'll talk about the defense. We got a whole lot more to get to on this very jam-packed edition of Locked On Oilers. We've got your team covered every day, so be sure to stick around. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller for longer. Personally, I'm a big fan of the no-shell variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I am snacking at my desk, working on the show, doing research, or producing, or I just need a quick protein boost to hit my macros for the day. They're a great go-to. Or if you're old school and you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein that provides all 9 essential amino acids. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are walking down a tough one. And I have been very ambiguous about my feelings towards the Oilers this season because they've ebbed and flowed with the results. Through the first 50 minutes of this game, I felt the Oilers were getting boat race. This looked like Oklahoma playing a non-FBS school week one. It felt like they were playing, they were playing Norfolk State in football, and it was 56-0 at the half, and the coach's kid was coming in at tight end for the fourth quarter. That's what the first 40-ish minutes of this game felt like, because the Kings were winning every single 50-50 puck. The Oilers couldn't break out. When the Oilers did break out, they would gain the offensive zone, and instead of continuing to push, trying to build depth and to give room for the subsequent waves of checkers to come, they would pass laterally, and those passes would get intercepted, or they would pass laterally and the puck wouldn't be handled cleanly and it would go out and they would need to regroup. And it felt like the Oilers had a million one and dones in this game, where you do all of the hard work, where you won the puck in the defensive zone, you got it out of there, you skated it the length of the defensive zone and then the neutral zone, and you gain the offensive zone and you have speed. That's the other part of this that's worth exploring too. If you're attacking the offensive zone with forward speed because you're skating, slamming on the brakes gives the defenders time to set up. And the Kings in this game, for at least the first 50-ish minutes of this game, they did a great job playing a high line, forcing the Oilers into those mistakes, making them move the puck before they wanted to. They drew Leon off sides a handful of times in this game by playing that high line as a means of trying to mitigate that Oilers speed through the neutral zone. And I felt like as the game went along, the Oilers started to get a feel for how they needed to attack, but there was not a lot of room in this game. When you go and look at the shot maps from this game as to where the shots on goal came from, the vast majority of those Oilers scoring chances are from the perimeter. They're from bad angles. You look at the goals they scored, pretty much all of them would be what you would classify as a high danger goal. They're really likely to go in. The least likely, probably the Connor goal, just by virtue of the angle he scored it from, being so tight in on the goalie and finding a way to sneak up on the goalie is the way I would describe it. And I think it was really important, and I wrote this down in my notes. And here, I want to show you on my iPad what I wrote down at the start of the third period. Can EDM make it interesting? I was not expecting the Oilers to come back in this hockey game. At 4-2, it felt like it was over, and that might be doomer. That might be a bit misguided, but with the score, what it was, where it was 4-1? Yeah, 4-1. Excuse me. I misspoke before when I said 4-2. When it was 4-1 going into the third period, I didn't expect the Oilers to come back and tie the game. I felt like it was reasonable to say, let's be competitive. Let's start getting our feet under us now so that by the time game 2 rolls around, we're ready to go. And God willing, they went out there and they played a really good third period. And yeah, some of that was by virtue of the Kings starting to turtle a little prematurely. They missed quite a few open nets after the Oilers had pulled Stuart Skinner, who we're going to get to in a second here. But sometimes all you need is a little bit of luck, and finding that stroke of luck is preparation and opportunity. And for as poorly as the Oilers played for the first 50 minutes of this game, they found a way to make this a game. And that is a real testament to this group. Now, I think it's also very metaphorical and symbolic of what this team at large has been, where you get little flashes of optimism that you think, oh, if they can do this, well, that means they can do almost anything. And that's the danger, because you see it in front of you. You watch Connor do this. You watch Leon. You watch Bush. You think, why can't they do this all the time? And God willing, Connor and Leon really do try their damnedest to drag this team along at times. And tonight was no exception. And I'm inclined to give Leon some benefit of the doubt as he gets back up to game speed, being that he just hasn't played in a while, and getting right, getting your feet under you, getting a feel for your line mates. I thought Knobloch was a little skittish, and I definitely think the team reflected that. I think I get why he was so quick to start juggling lines, the score being what it was, but he also, when you're in that position, when you're a coach and you're trying to instill some confidence, constantly juggling the lines and changing who's playing with who is only sending a subliminal message to the rest of your team that I don't feel good about what we're doing. We need to change something, but I can't change who's on the team, so I can only change who's playing with who. And ultimately, it did end up working out reasonably well for the Oilers down the stretch. They did control the game, especially in the final 5 to 10 minutes, I would say. Final 6-7 minutes of this game. The Oilers ended up with a good chunk of the quality scoring chances in this game. I mean, you look at this game not knowing how the score got to be what it was. You see the final score was 6-5. You see the Oilers had 68% of the high danger chances, 55% of the expected goals, and only 42% of the goals. That would lead you to believe that this is a goaltending issue. That would lead you to believe that all you needed was Stu to make one more big save. All you needed was Stu to make one more play. And the Oilers were close, man. And that's what's going to be biting about losing a game like this, where you had a chance. Not because I don't think the Oilers are capable of winning 4 of the next 6 games, especially considering we haven't gone back to Edmonton yet, but you only get so many opportunities to pull one of those off. And yes, you made Drago bleed. You think about Rocky IV, the reaction where he finally bled for the first time in the fight. And you scored on Darcy Kemper, which you hadn't done in the regular season in a hot minute. You hadn't found a way to break this group down. And the Kings, to their credit, are annoying to play against. They play really good man-on-man defense. They do a great job of passing guys off. They really make you uncomfortable in transition. And like we said before, they were playing a really high line in that defensive zone where as soon as you gained it, they were immediately on you. You were under pressure and you had to make a decision. And far too often, the Oilers were making bad decisions. And the fact that the Oilers, who did not play a great game for almost the entire game, found a way to get back in this game should be encouraging. The problem is, if the Oilers were capable of turning it up a gear, why did it take 55 minutes to get there? Thus lies the conundrum of the 2024-2025 Edmonton Oilers. And this series is only in the opening stages. We have played a single game. We've learned some things. There are definitely some takeaways, some corrections the Oilers could look to pursue. The Kings are going to adjust too. And that's really the trick in these best of 7 series, because it's a series of counter punches where one thing happens in a singular game, then we go to the next game. In that next game, one team that lost is going to try and fix what it didn't do well. And then based on that, the team that won game 1 is going to try and adapt what it had done well in game 1 but didn't feel good about and find ways to continue tinkering. And it creates a real back and forth, a real chess match. And some of it, maybe you want to say the Oilers need to get to a cycle game a little bit earlier. Maybe you want to say Chris Knobloch needs to stop putting the lines in a blender as often as he did and try and bring the temperature of the game down and settle it down and give themselves a little bit more of a chance to just get their feet under them and then start to push. Okay, but you do have to get there. We're going to take our second and final break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we'll talk about some takeaways, some things the Oilers could look to improve on going into game number 2. So be sure to stick around. The NBA and NHL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Because right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so fun and so easy. Whether it's picking my favorite team, the Knicks unfortunately did lose on Monday night, not very fun, or diving into player props from three-pointers, steals, assists, blocks, rebounds. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet on your favorite props. Plus, after games start, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for your chance to win big. Do not miss out on the playoff action. Head on over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we wind down. And playoff series present one of the rawest form of intellectual sparring in hockey, because like we said at the end of that last segment, the Oilers are going to try and adjust based on what didn't work in this game, and the Kings are going to try and adjust off of those adjustments. If I'm the Kings, if I'm Jim Hiller, I am continuing to tell my team we played a great game for 50 minutes, but we did not pursue our offensive game enough down the backstretch. And yeah, we missed a few open nets with an empty net. And if we just hit one of those, this comeback doesn't happen. I can easily convince myself of that. I can tell my guys that, believe it, and think we're doing okay. If I'm Chris Knobloch, my first message is very simple. We did not get off to a good start. We were not ready. I need to be better. We will be better. And when you look at the splits between periods in terms of shots on goal, scoring chances, that first period got away from the Oilers really quickly. And that's one of the dangers of having an unreliable goalie like Stuart Skinner, who, again, if you're new to the show, if this is your first time diving in right after game one because you want to learn a little bit more, I really like Stuart Skinner, the person. He's a good dude. He's a nice story, finding his way as an NHL goalie, kind of by accident after Jack Campbell, marquee free agent the Oilers had signed a couple seasons ago, didn't work out. He is a markedly below average NHL goalie. The Oilers entered these playoffs with the worst statistical goaltending tandem in the entire NHL. The Oilers' margin for error in net is basically nil, and it's not a great recipe, because last year the Oilers had a better lineup. They were able to play a little bit more possession. They were able to control play a little bit more. And because of that, they had less work for Stuart Skinner or the two games Calvin Pickard played against the Canucks. Tonight, it was a shooting gallery out there. And one of the real tricks here, and this ties into what we talked about a minute ago as far as getting off to a good start, being prepared, being ready. When you get off to a stinky start and you're playing from behind, one of the real pitfalls is that guys start freelancing. Guys start going into business for themselves. If you're a WWE or a professional wrestling fan, you know what I mean as far as going into business for yourself. But that's kind of the conundrum here, because everybody wants to help. It creates a systemic breakdown. When everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut off, nobody is where they need to be. You think about some of those Kings goals where you have 2 or 3 Oilers below the goal line. The puck goes from behind the net to in front of the net to a player with nobody within 5 feet of him. And that's because everybody feels that pressure. Everybody realizes the situation and, oh, we need to make a play. We need to make a play. We need to make a play. I need to do something. And that's where these games start to snowball on you. And when you have a goalie who is very prone to getting shelled, you are putting yourself in a dangerous position by not adhering to your structure. And we always want to commend guys for trying to make a difference, for trying to play better. But there's a reason Bill Belichick and Tom Brady won all those Super Bowls telling guys, do your job. Don't do someone else's job. Do your job. You're on this team to do your job. And the Oilers didn't even do their jobs for a good chunk of this game and still had a chance. And that's what's going to eat at me. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get ready for bed. I'll probably read a little in bed before I sleep because I'm still kind of juiced up from the backstretch of the game. But I'll probably be staring at the ceiling for a little bit before I do end up falling asleep. And if you know me, that's kind of out of character. I'm generally a guy who head hits the pillow, I'm out within 5 minutes, but you don't get a lot of those chances to pull a gut punch in the first round. And if you pull off that comeback, if you come back from 4-1 down and you win 6-5 in overtime, you have punched the Kings in the mouth. And that might be the fight. That genuinely had the capacity to swing the entire series. And again, it's only a game one. You don't want to read too much into a game one. I saw a clip earlier today of Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo talking about the Lakers series and how their first game went and some of the lineup choices they had to make. And Bill really made the point of saying, well, I don't want to make too much of it off of game one because I'm trying to sound smarter than everyone else. And you want to avoid that pitfall where you know what the Oilers need to improve on. They need more zone time. They cannot spend this much time in their own end. I would like to see Cam Dineen draw in for Josh Brown, especially if Troy Stecher cannot go. If Troy Stecher can go, which they're Oilers, being that he didn't travel with the team to LA, I'm more inclined to believe we'll see Stecher when the series returns to Edmonton. Ditto for Evander Kane, who, if you want to believe what Elliot Friedman had said on the Sportsnet intermission, was being held out of the game because the NHL was kind of making a stink about some of the players that had been stashed on LTIR ahead of the playoffs and then them being ready for game number one. So we probably see Troy Stecher and Evander Kane in Edmonton over the weekend. I think there's an outside chance we get a look at John Klingberg at some point in this series, especially if Josh Brown, Cam Dineen really struggle or don't really show signs of improvement. And the Oilers have chances. They have one less now. You only get 6 more of these. You have to win 4 of the next 6. That's not a tall ask, but if you're going to find ways to win, when the other team starts to give you one, it is really incumbent upon you to take advantage of that. And I think that's what's going to eat at me here. You know, this series has been largely, over the last handful of seasons, largely an Oilers-driven production. They have found ways to win, and when they haven't, it's largely been their mistakes that have allowed the Kings to hang around because of the talent disparity. But tonight, it felt like the Oilers were doing the Kings a solid. And look, some of it's having home ice for the first time, getting to match Kopitar up against Draisaitl, getting to match Danault up against McDavid, and then giving Byfield and Fiala easier matchups, getting them out there against Nugent-Hopkins' line or against Adam Henrique's line. And there's work to be done here. The Oilers are probably going to juggle their lines again. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Cam Dineen drawn for Josh Brown, unless John Klingberg can go, which, again, that's a different conversation, which we very well might get to on tomorrow's show. But I do think that will do it for this very depressing Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On NHL Game Night, covering the NHL playoffs right after the games go final. Available on the Locked On NHL feeds over on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I will talk to you guys tomorrow where we will do a deep dive into game number 1. I'll talk to you guys then. And until then, let's go Oilers.